You saw the video. And I've got to be honest, that the video is a very inaccurate portrayal of what happened that particular day. I don't have time to go through all the details here because it's actually a very long, drawn-out affair. I'll just touch on a couple keys, and I definitely don't have time to cover the entire injury and the recovery process because it's still ongoing. The incident happened November 13, 2004, and I'm still recovering. I still have issues that I have to deal with and fight through and try to overcome. And I will for the rest of my life. So I'll try to summarize a little bit. But on November 13, 2004, as the video did mention, there were several Marines that was trapped inside a house because they went in. We were doing room clearing, house to house, city of Fallujah. And Fallujah, if you don't know your history, was the fiercest urban combat U.S. military faced since the Vietnam War. Several thousand U.S. Marines and Army soldiers, Navy corpsmen, and Navy, various other MOSs against 8,000 foreign fighters, not just Iraqis. And that's the key that a lot of people need to understand, because the media doesn't portray it. It wasn't just Iraqis we were fighting. The majority of them were foreign fighters coming from other countries. Because again, the bad guys we faced, their agenda was not to win that battle. Their agenda was just to kill us. Not me personally, me as an American. And they figure if they can come there and do it instead of coming all the way here to the United States, it's much easier for them. And that's the type of enemy we were facing. So that particular house, there was 4 Marines who was down inside it, and I went in with several other Marines. And this one particular room was not clear. I saw that it was not clear. The other Marines went past it, so I grabbed Lance Corporal Nicole. We went to clear that room. And as I was pieing that room off, which is basically just going around the corner slowly to be able to see a section of it at a time so I don't fully expose myself, they're about 2 feet in front of me, probably about this close. Right where, if you go into a typical room where the light switch is, and you walk in a room, that's about how close I was. Well, my M16 was longer than the distance between me and him. That's how close I was. And I'll never forget him this day. I still see him. He had an AK-47. He shot the AK-47 at me, but I had just enough reaction to be able to back up just enough where the round skimmed in front of me and impacted the wall next to me. And again, because I was too close to even fire, I had to take my M16 out of my shoulder, pull it back with like so, and then I stuck it in his chest and started to pull the trigger. I don't want to get graphic. I'm not going to get real graphic. But I do want to explain parts of this because there's a meaning behind it. I put probably about 7 to 8 rounds, point blank range, my barrel right in his chest before he finally went down. And when he went down, he was still moving. He was still functioning. And I had to put 2 more in his forehead. And he was still functioning. He was still moving. And the reason why is because, again, that's the kind of enemy we were facing over there. We started figuring this out after about day 2 or day 3 of the battle. We started coming across weapons caches and discovered methamphetamines and other drugs in those caches. Because the enemy we was fighting, they would hype themselves up on drugs in order to keep fighting and be able to take a lot of pain. Because, again, their agenda was not to win that battle. They knew that was impossible. Their agenda was to take as many of us with them as they could. Because every one of us that went down was another front page headline in USA Today, the Washington Post, the New York Times, which caused more protesting, which caused more political pressure, which eventually is the way to win that war. And that's the enemy we were facing. So when he went down, the dust and everything was kicked up. I couldn't see in the room. I was the point man. And all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, all heck broke loose, and we got impact from behind us, from up in the second floor. And all I felt was, it felt like somebody was hitting me with a sledgehammer from my behind. I felt the impact in my back, and I felt it in my legs, and I just crumpled to the ground, and I was right there in the doorway. Well, the guy I just shot was blocking the way, so I couldn't get through, and I was now on the ground. So I started to crawl, and I had to try to push him out of the way. But then after I got around the corner of the room, I made 3 decisions that day to die. Not that I wanted to, trust me. But 3 decisions to die. And the first one was because Lance Nicole, who was behind me, was also hit. He was stuck out in the kill zone. And there was nobody else around. My leg was hanging from nothing. I was shot in the back. I was not doing well. Somebody had to go out and get him, so I crawled back out. I crawled on my side with all that gear on, all that bulky gear and equipment. I took my M16, I just laid it in the doorway to mark my position so that any friendlies that did eventually come would know that there was friendlies there and not get fratricized. I pulled my 9mm, I had it ready. I crawled back out and tried to drag him to safety. I knew I was going to get shot again. There was no way to avoid it. But something had to be done, and that was my first decision, and I took 3 more impacts. 3 more rounds hit me while I was crawling out to try to grab him. I took 1 more in the back and took one in the butt. And I like to joke around with the one in the butt. I say his aim was a little behind on that one. and I took another impact in the side. But I was able to get him to safety. And then I made the second decision. After I got him inside the room, I made the second decision to die. And that was, I had 1 pressure dressing, which is a bandage we had back then, to treat wounds, and he had 1. But I had multiple wounds, he had multiple wounds. It wasn't enough for both of us. One of us had to live so the other one could die. So I gave my dressing up, put her on his leg as a tourniquet, and then tried to wrestle off his gear, use his dressing to treat his abdominal wounds, knowing that I would probably bleed out. But again, it was either both of us or one of us, and I chose him, rightfully so. Then I couldn't quite get him treated because, again, just a confined space, my gear on, the severity of my injuries, the severity of his injuries. And while I was trying to do that, I laid my pistol on my chest just in case I needed to defend anything. And long story short, then I heard a noise to my right. And I looked over, and at first I thought it was the enemy coming. But what it was a grenade. And again, that was my third choice to die, not by choice, but sometimes you don't have choice. You just gotta, you gotta overcome adversity the way it is. And again, I really, in all honesty, everybody calls it heroic. In all honesty, I'm being honest, I thought I was a goner anyways. It was the right thing to do. And I rolled over, covered Lance Nicole, using my body to protect and shield his. And I took the brunt of the grenade. I still have shrapnel in me. I'm very popular at the airport going through the metal detector. If you look at my x-rays, you see dots everywhere. I've still got probably, I couldn't even count them, probably 70, 80 pieces of shrapnel still inside. I had over 100 puncture wounds. And when all said and done, I had over 100 puncture wounds. I had 7 gunshot wounds. And that later, about another hour and a half while they tried to get us out. Tried to speed it up a little bit, time restraints. I tell you what, the real hills that day was one, Sergeant Mitchell. He came into that room to try to pull us out, and he didn't have to. Another one was Sergeant Private Boswood at the time, because the only way anybody could get in there with the way that the enemy was, and they had us pinned down, he had to crawl on his back across the kill zone and shoot up at it in order to get the angle of fire to be able to suppress the enemy. You talk about remarkable young Americans. That's the kind of people they serve. But eventually he was able to do that. 2 other young Marines, Lance Cole Marquez, Lance Cole Schaefer, were able to get in there and pull me out. And the picture, I think, I couldn't quite see, but the picture showed up there, me being carried out. And the story behind the pistol is because I was thinking, those 2 young Marines left their weapons behind. And you think about it, that terrible of a situation, and we're right in the kill zone, and they left their weapons behind so they'd have their hands free in order to carry me. That's pretty commendable. So the reason I had my pistol is I'm thinking, well, if somebody can shoot, at least I have a hand free, and at least to be able to defend. Thankfully, it wasn't needed, because the other Marines were able to keep it pinned down lower. But after I got medevac, I got flown out of the city, and I was flown to a field hospital, Camp TQ, which is about 40 miles outside the city of Fallujah. And again, I was in bad shape. My adrenaline and everything else was 60% blood loss. My adrenaline kept me, I was never going in and out like the video said. I remained conscious the whole time. adrenaline, everything else flowing. But to be honest with you, I thought my leg was gone, my right leg. Because really the only thing holding it on was my camis and my boot band. Because when all's said and done, I lost 5 inches of it. From about 1.5 inches below my knee to about 2 inches above my ankle was all gone. Just the only thing left was my femoral artery and a little bit of calf muscle. And so I thought at that time that I had no option. So when I went to the field hospital, I was expecting to wake up out of surgery and have my right leg amputated, along with all the other injuries they had to treat. I also had perforated eardrums. I hear hearing aids now, or use hearing aids. I have a TBI, traumatic brain injury. That's why I gotta have notes, because I usually can't remember, short-term focus, long list of other things. But I really thought my leg was gone, but the doctor at Camp TQ told me that you still have blood going to your foot. So as long as you have blood going to your foot, because of your femoral artery, I'm going to keep it, let the doctors back in the States make the decision. That gave me hope. That, to be honest with you, I hung on to for the next 2 years. Because the next 2 years, the doctors wanted to amputate my leg. Because it just was not, they didn't think, despite the process of trying to grow the leg back, they just didn't think it was going to be possible. And even if it was possible, they didn't think I'd ever walk again, ever run again. And if I would have just amputated and gone prosthetic, I would have been up on my feet within a few weeks, and my recovery would have been cut short. Long story short, I spent 2 years in the hospital trying to recover. Very humbling experience, because the shot in my butt, they had to pack every day, so that's very humbling. Have to be rolled over by a nurse and they pack your butt. Not a great conversation, I know, but that's very humbling. I had to do that for 6 months before it finally healed up enough, etc. But I tell you, whenever you have adversity, one key thing you got to always maintain is a sense of humor. I remember I was in a hospital after about the 4th month, and when they pump all those drugs and everything into you for such a long period of time, you get a thing called constipation. I'm not going to go into details, Google it, but you get a thing called constipation. So I asked the nurse, is there anything you can give me? Well, the policy and the procedures are when the nurse gives you any kind of medication, even if it's aspirin, they are required to give you instructions and to watch you take it. Well, this happened to be an intern. So she came in and gave me a suppository. Again, Google it if you don't know what it is. She came in and gave me a suppository, and she did not give any directions, and obviously she did not watch. And then she left. So I did what you have to do with a suppository. And then she came back in about 30 minutes and asked if everything, if there was any problems. I said, well, I'm trying to remember my exact words, but I looked her in the eye and I said, you know, there was no problem, but that had to be the worst tasting medication I've ever had. And she just got the most horrified look on her face and ran out to the head nursing desk. And 2 minutes later, the head nurse comes in and goes, you didn't swallow that, did you? I go, no, I'm just messing with it. But long story short, it was a long recovery, and I'll tell you, you learn a lot about other people when you go through recoveries like that. One, you hear Taylor Morris's story and how Danielle stood beside him. That is freaking commendable. But you learn a lot about other people too. And a lot of people I learned about my close friends. Because I was single, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have made it through because I couldn't take care of myself. I needed, around the clock, people to do things for me. But I also remember when I finally was starting to get out of the hospital, I was able to get in a wheelchair. I looked pretty horrific, that I'll give. But I was out in a wheelchair in public one day, and this happened on a routine basis. And I remember this one lady who approached me and asked me what happened. And as soon as I said I was a U.S. Marine, I was wounded overseas, she went into a long tirade about how I deserved it, how I got what I asked for, and et cetera, et cetera. I just listened, because it wasn't the first time I encountered it. And I told her, you're welcome. which stunned her. And I said, you're welcome, because of people like me, give you for you to say stupid things like you said. But for every one of them, you get the good stories too. I finally, after a long time, when I was finally up in a crutch and I was up in a cast, I wasn't supposed to be driving, but after you've been confined for that long, and after people tell you you'll never be normal again, and after people tell you you'll never walk again, finally when you're up on a crutch, you're able to do at least one thing for yourself and take advantage of it. So I broke what, do not try this at home. I had a cast on, and I got in my truck, and I used my cane to work the gas pedal, and the left foot to work the brake, and I drove to Starbucks. Why Starbucks? Because I could. And I crush up to the counter, I order a drink, and I sit down. And I put my leg up on the chair, I put the crutches up, and I was reading the paper, and this lady approached me, and I thought, well, here we go again. Well, she stuck her hand, she goes, are you a Marine? I go, yes, ma'am. I go, were you injured overseas? I go, yes, ma'am. And she stuck her hand out and shook my hand. And as soon as she shook my hand, I felt something in my hand. And I looked down, and it was green, and it ended up being a $100 bill. Well, as soon as I looked up, if there was Olympics for little old lady, she would have been gold medalist, because she was gone. I could not get up fast enough on my crutches and try to catch her. And because obviously I didn't want it, but there's great people out there, and that was her way of showing appreciation. I think I'm out of time, am I not? So I didn't get to finish, that's all right, but hey, I want to look each and every one of you all in the eye and say, don't make great things happen. A lot of people, they say they don't achieve the success they want to achieve because of circumstances or opportunities. I tell you, you make your chances. You're the one that chooses your destiny. You can accomplish anything in life if you just have two things. If you use two things, this and this. If you use your head and put your heart into it, you'll accomplish anything. So I'm going to shut up. Out of time. I know you got to get on the bus. And I know you're just waiting to get back to class, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.